Okay, comrades. I'm really sorry. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm on the National Committee of the People's Assembly, and we've tried to get around to as many May Days and to different types of. We've got a series of meetings running at the moment around the country called Britain is Broke General Election Now, which kicked off. Do you remember when we were first of all meant to leave the European Union, and we launched that campaign then to say what we don't need is another struggle over Brexit. What we need is a struggle over austerity, that austerity remains the issue. And I think it was on that basis that I got invited to come along today, to see you all. Good turnout, well done. There are very good May Days occurring. There's Chesterfield just on Monday, and Nottingham was today. And there is a great spirit, I think, in the movement that is beginning to reappear again. And Nottinghamshire May Day today, there wasn't a great number of banners there, but there were hundreds of young people there. Hundreds of young people with handmade placards, mainly motivated by the climate crisis. But that some people kind of push that away from the movement. But it is clearly a central issue of the exploitation of workers worldwide by capitalism that has created this crisis. So it should be our issue as much as anything else. Anyway, what I want to apologise for was only just arriving. I've been to a couple of other things I know, and it really, I'd only have to guess what there is left to tell you, which is probably not very much because you had some excellent speeches. But I'm sure you've heard and been reminded and all agreed that we have enormous power as a working class in Britain, enormous power. And some of the things that Precious just mentioned there about Birmingham, just when the working class actually flexes its muscles and decides to make a decision, we get results. And yet we're tempted not to do it. We're tempted to fall back on that thing of nothing can be done, we can't really succeed. The powers of being too strong for us. Our political parties are rather worried to stick to their best policies because they're told by the media or whatever that it will make them unelectable, or that they'll make sure that they're not elected if they stick to their policies. And so we go from year to year, May Day to May Day, recognising the enormous strength that we have around the country. You go to the TUC, it's not the most inspiring event. But nonetheless, you have a room full of people who you're aware, when you look around the room, the people in that room could run the country. There are civil servants, there are engineers, there are teachers, there are bin men, there are dinner ladies, there are teachers. The trade union movement encapsulates everything that we need in Britain in terms of running the country. What we don't, or the people we don't need aren't in that room. But wherever they are, we don't need them. We don't need the Bank of England. We don't need these things, because they are parasitic on our lives. They live on our lives. And we create the wealth. You know all this stuff, but I want to say this. We haven't succeeded in defeating austerity. I think the People's Assembly has been successful in defeating some of the lies about austerity, that we're all in it together. Nobody believes that anymore. That it was a necessary thing, that it was inevitable. Nobody believes that anymore. Nobody believes that the crisis that produced the austerity reaction from governments right across the world in service of the people who created the crisis in the first place, the big banks and big business. Nobody now believes that crises of that type can't be predicted. Do you remember everybody said, well, nobody predicted that crisis. Well, Marx predicted it, I don't know how many, 160 odd years ago, that there were recurrent crises and each one is worse than the one that came before and deeper. And this is, I think, what I wanted to talk about this afternoon. There is another big new economic crisis on the way. It's not a seminar, I'm not going to go into all the details, but just check out the facts and figures in the internet about the world downturn. And what's producing it is what produced the last one. Around the world, the forces of production are greater and greater and greater, and there is a crisis of overproduction. So what the hell do they do with their money? They put it into finance. And what does finance do? In the end, it bursts as a bubble, and we get a major recession. And we're about to be entering another one before the last one's over, before we've defeated austerity. What does that mean? It means a big new move towards austerity again. It means that there will be a consensus around the fact that something needs to be done. And we need to be the opposite of that consensus of saying the thing that needs to be done is that we need to invest in people's lives, in public services, in industry, and we need to take control of those institutions which keep bringing the world to the brink of disaster. We need to take control of financial institutions and the huge multinational corporations that just play with our lives all around the world. They want us here, they import us. They don't want us here, they kick us out. Or they'll move their money to where we're cheap and take their money from where we're expensive, or at least threaten us that they will, over and over again. So what we're going to get, I think, in relation to the new economic crisis that's now building, is that there will be more intense competition between big capitalist, I'm going to call them, I hope you don't mind, they're capitalist blocs, there's no other word for them. The European Union, the United States and its area of influence, and China too. It's true, the competition will be there from China, from the private enterprise that operates in China. There'll be obviously all the stock exchanges and so on. There will be enormous competition between them. But there will also be enormous hostility to working class people everywhere. So they need their institutions, they need their capitalist institutions, their worldwide institutions in order to, what they say, rebalance the economy after a crisis. They need that competition, but they need to attack workers. Now, they're going to do everything they can to hang on to them. It just seems bizarre to me, I don't know about you, but we're being encouraged to vote in an institution which we've already decided we don't want to be part of and don't want to have anything to do with. We've decided that, and every political party and every trade union after that vote in 2016 said, we will honour and respect the result of the referendum. So how come we're voting in the European Union elections? Anyway, it seems to be a bit of a mystery to me and a gift to the ultra-right, who are able to capitalise on this in order to try to demonstrate that they have some sort of following. Of course, the turnout will be pitifully small as always, and I believe should be. As well as those austerity institutions around the world, though, they need their own friendly governments. And they are terrified now, obviously we all know this, but the population don't know. They are terrified that the Labour Party will stick to its election manifestos and will stick to those policies. Absolutely terrified. And therefore, all the scandals and all the smears and all the attacks on Corbyn and on McDonnell, but those attacks aren't on Corbyn or McDonnell, they're on working class people. That's what those attacks are, really. They're an attack on us because we dare to say, through whatever medium, we have a right to run the economy that we create. You don't have a right to run an economy that we create. It's a simple message that goes back many hundreds of years. But now they're desperate to hang on to their international institutions. They're desperate to reject, or that we reject, any kind of parliamentary opposition. But the People's Assembly believes and has tried to develop, since it was formed in 2013, what we call a unified, integrated, single movement. We've got loads of campaigns, and I'm sure, I'm from Derby, we've got more campaigns than you can shake a stick at, really. You remember, I think it was Tony Benn said that there are too many socialist organisations and not enough socialists. And I think it rings a bell that we've got too many campaigns, but we don't yet have a movement. We don't yet have the integrated movement that says the NHS problems are generated by exactly the same things as education problems, by exactly the same thing as the anti-union law. All these things are generated by the determination of this tiny, hugely wealthy, hugely powerful capitalist class to keep us where we are and to continue to make profit from us. Now, we all know it, so what are we going to do about it? The People's Assembly, as I say, has a national committee. It's not that glamorous, it's not that good, but we do try to get messages from around the country. And I think we agreed that what's happened to our movement, to the People's Assembly movement, is that we've turned too much into a coach booking service, where we all get on the coach and we all go to London and we march from here to there. The media largely ignore us. A few fascists have a fun day out trying to upset us, a few anarchists have us. But actually, come the day, what happens? You get back on the coach and you go home again. Now, in the first meeting of the People's Assembly back in 2013, the then Chief of Staff of Unite the Union said that if the government insisted on continuing to run the country, to govern the country in this way, this was in 2014, 2013, we had a responsibility to make the country ungovernable. Now, it was a shocking kind of statement for a lot of people, but when you think about it, there is no half measures there, is it? If they insist on that being their way of governing the country, austerity, oppression, international links that always end up with somebody, some working class person somewhere, some migrant worker being super exploited, some person losing their job because they've decided to shift it abroad. It always ends up the same way. And if they insist on running it like that, what else can we do? We can protest. But the problem with protest is it generally means that it leaves the people in power who were there at the beginning, who you're protesting against. We need a strategy for removing them, don't we? And the People's Assembly is trying to help develop such a strategy by trying to bring together the campaigning groups into one forum, which might try to, we publish a little pamphlet, you might have seen it, In Place of Austerity, which deals with alternatives to austerity, why they've occurred. But we've got a huge job on our hands, particularly as this economic crisis looms. I've tried to understand economics for, well, I'm 67 now, and I took it at O-level actually, O-level economics, and I remember, I'll finish on this I think, I probably should have finished before, but anyway, my economics teacher, the first time we had an economics lesson, my economics teacher said, look, it's Friday, and I'm exhausted, I don't know about you, and it's not a good way, he said to this group, all boys, not a good way to start a new study. What about if we take the afternoon off? So we thought, he's joking, he must be joking. He said, oh no, I'm not joking, so let's do it. I said, we'll all start fresh on Monday, we'll all be better for it. When you leave, don't make too much noise, the head teacher won't be very impressed by you going, but anyway, let's do that. Then he said, oh, we better make it official. If there's anybody against, we won't do it. All those in favour of taking the afternoon off. So we all put our hands up, and he put his hand up, and he said, well, that's unanimous. So that's a unanimous decision. That's fantastic. All right, so put your books away and let's go. Oh, he said, one thing, they do pay me to work here, and I'm going to lose an afternoon's pay. So how much have you got on you? and we said, I don't know. Anyway, put all our things on the desk, and he went around counting it. 6pence, shilling, 2 shillings, 3. He said, that's nowhere near enough. That's almost an insult. That's ridiculous. I can't work for that. He said, no, we'll have to do it. Get your books out. And we said, well, that's not fair, we just had a vote on it. And he said, I see what you're doing here. He said, you're confusing democracy, that's where the people decide what happens, with economic democracy, which is where the rich people decide what happens. Now get your books out. I've never forgotten that lesson in economics all my life. And now they're going to tell us again that the rich people, the people with the money, know best how to run this economy when they nearly destroyed it completely for themselves as well as for us just a few years ago, and now it's going to happen again. And I think we have to really build a mass movement now, not just campaigns, but mass movements in every town. If we're going to make the country ungovernable, we can't do it on a coach trip to London. It's useful every now and again, but it doesn't deliver the goods. What delivers the goods is what they did with the climate change kids. Went up there, but they haven't quite got the notion of a class conflict yet, but they've got an idea that if you don't bloody do something, nothing will happen. And I think we have to convince people that there are enough of us in our towns and cities around the country to make the government, the current government, think to themselves, we're in trouble here. And they know they're in trouble already, but also for us to then be able to say to people, why is it that you're supported by socialists and opposed by right-wing capitalists? Why is that? And build a movement which has a knowledge and an awareness of the whole society right across Britain, but most importantly, in our own communities. I think it's in our communities that the battle against racism will be won. It's not on mass demonstrations, they're important, but they don't win the day. It's every day, out on the street, fighting for the hospitals, fighting for the schools, getting involved, destroying universal credit. We have to take responsibility for these things. It's not just a right that we still have at the moment to protest. It is a duty and responsibility, and I think that we need to do that. So thank you very much for inviting me to your May Day, and there are others, as I say, occurring all around the country. Together, workers are very, very powerful. It's not true that Workers United are never defeated. That is just not true. But what is true, as Bob Crow used to say, if you don't fight, you certainly won't win. And therefore, let's get it together, comrades. Thank you very much for the invitation, and good May Day to you.